guys. Do you know, we've got another hiccup. I'm sorry about this, but although we've managed to master the technology at last, we haven't got any guest tonight. The thing is that I had a lovely phone conversation with Blay Whitby about his appearance here. I spoke to him at some length a week or so ago, and I can't raise him now. So I don't know what's going on. One of the problems is that he has a Sussex University email address, and they appear to have recently upgraded their security. So unless you're on their contact list, you get blocked. But I overcame that. And as I said, I had a long and enjoyable telephone conversation with him. And we agreed everything. And we did a StreamYard test. But unfortunately, I can't raise him now. So that's a bit of a mystery. I sent him emails. And of course, I get blocked on the way. Although I've tried his other email address. I've rung his phone number. Nothing happened there. So we have a choice. We can either call the whole thing off, or maybe I could play you a debate that I had before lockdown against a Muslim in Manchester University. Can you give me some indication of whether you'd like that? I've got the comment bank open, so I'm looking to see for your responses. I can see we've got 13 viewers. Woohoo! That's nice. And honestly, I'm really enjoying these series of chats and, you know, little guests that I have. And it's a terrific opportunity to speak to experts in their various fields, and so many different fields. But tonight we have a hiccup. So I'm offering you call the whole thing off, or I'll play a debate I had with a Muslim in Manchester University for their Islamic Society before lockdown, way back in February, if you can remember that far back. We've got one yes, thank you. Okay. Yes, you're right, Tom. It is. I agree. Tom says, it's annoying the guest hasn't showed. That's true. Yeah. I'm sorry, Tom. I've done my best. It's the first time. You know, we've had 12 moderately successful shows. And you want to see the debate? Great. Okay. They're coming in now. Okay. These are nice. Thanks, guys. Right. I'll get it on screen and share with you. Give me a minute. Coming up. We'll be there soon. I can tell you a bit about what's forthcoming, though. Obviously, we'll reschedule Blay, but next week we have Ed Morris from Portsmouth University. The week after that, we've got Mark Darcy. And the week after that, not actually publicized yet, but we've got, who is it? Give me a minute, I'll think of it. Here's the debate coming up.
Repeatable and assurable, full stop.
Share screen. And play the debate. Oh. Chrome doesn't want to share my screen. Nothing's ever easy. System preferences, security, privacy. Click privacy. Click screen recording. And share with, okay. Oh, it wants me to quit. So what I'm going to have to do, it wants to be rebooted. It wants the browser, Chrome, rebooted. So I'm going to have to break this connection and then get back to you. Sorry, bye-bye. Hello, I'm back. This is one of those, I've got a saying for this, you know, it's nothing is ever easy. By the way, do you like the beard? I'm going for the silver fox, look. Share screen. Share my screen with you. Play the video. Big it up. There you go.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Good evening. My name is Zaid Abed Wahid. Most of you probably don't know me. I am your moderator or chair for the evening. I'm the former Debating Society president from the University of Salford, as well as the former ISOC president from the University of Salford. My role this evening is to ensure that a meaningful and intellectual debate occurs between these two gentlemen to my right. And to introduce them, on the far right is... not politically, is Imran Hussain, lecturer, instructor, and philosopher on Islamic thought. And to my, also to the right, but not far right, is John Richards, retired science teacher, by his own words, minor politician, author, and representative of the Atheist Alliance International. So the format for the evening's debate is as follows. Each side will have 20 minutes to introduce their point. There will be a 10-minute rebuttal on either side, followed by a 15-minute discussion between both sides on this table over here, and 8-minute closing remarks followed.
Who's that? Oh, sorry guys, I just had a phone call. I thought it might be Blay, but he didn't say who he was. Can you still hear me? Yeah? When I full screen my video, can you still see it? I'll have to go onto my laptop and check. I'll go on as a viewer. Right. Okay, so let's see what happens. Start again.
Questions and answers. With regards to questions and answers, please join the Slido over there and send your questions in anonymously, and we will try and get through as many of the most relevant ones as we can, as quickly as we can towards the end. As you can probably see from the top of the slide, the evening's topic is life absurd without God? So before we begin, just some rules for the audience. Yes, there are rules for you. As I said, please do save your questions for the Q&A section. Don't shout them out, just type them up and we'll see if we can get to them. Use the link provided and try to keep them as clear and as on topic as possible to avoid me rambling on trying to understand your parables. Secondly, please be respectful to the speakers and to each other. If you agree on a point, let it be known by clapping or doing that weird jazz hand thing that Manchester students do. Please, no boos, cheering, shouting, takbirs, none of that, please. I'm serious. I'm not John Bercow. This is not the Houses of Parliament. Let's keep it professional. So with all that out of the way, I think that's pretty much everything, yes? So let's start with our first speaker to give their introduction, Imran Hussain.
Okay, Bismillah and Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum. Which basically means may the peace and blessings of God be upon all of you. Now, the topic at hand is a very, very interesting topic tonight, which is life absurd in the absence of God? It's a very interesting question. It's a very pressing question because the way I want to look at it tonight is, that if you deny God, if you turn away from God, if you reject God, and you claim to be an atheist or a naturalist, and I'm going to define my terms just so we're clear. When I say atheist, I'm referring to those individuals that, generally speaking, say there is no God, there is no creator, no gods for that matter. And a naturalist is someone who would say, well, all that exists is the physical material world. There is nothing beyond the physical. It's all matter. And everything can be explained via physical causes, right? So most atheists, as is understood by Richard Dawkins, most atheists are naturalists. Now, I'd like to know what John's position is tonight as well. It would help resulting in a more of a fruitful discussion from that perspective. But if you adopt atheism or naturalism, what implications does that have on your life? Now, what I'm going to be suggesting tonight is that life becomes absurd from almost every single perspective. And the way I want to look at this initially is from the perspective of the things that really matter to us as human beings. The deeper questions of life, such as, what is my purpose? What is my ultimate purpose? Let's begin with this question for a second. The question of purpose, the question of ultimate purpose is something that has been around for we don't know how long, God knows how long, right? It's been there from the beginning of time, if you like. Philosophers, thinkers, they've engaged with this question. They've asked this question. They've tried to figure out the answers to this question. And this is a question that many of us ask today. What is the purpose of my existence? What is the purpose of my life? Why am I here? Why do I exist? And what I want to suggest here is that if you adopt atheism or naturalism, there is no answer. There is no ultimate purpose to your existence. Now, before I sort of discuss this any further, let me just highlight that when you say you're an atheist or a naturalist, you are denying a creator, a cause. And essentially what you are saying otherwise, or in another way of looking at it, is that everything is a result of random physical processes. Atoms and molecules have been whizzing around for God knows how many years, and obviously pun intended here, God knows how long. Atoms and molecules whizzing around at random have been colliding into each other and have resulted in everything that we see in existence today. And I want us to really think about this for a second. Essentially, everything we see in existence today is one big accident. It's an accidental byproduct of lengthy processes, random, cold, physical processes that have been taking place at random and have resulted in everything we see in existence today. And that includes ourselves. And if that is the case, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, if that is the case, then where is the ultimate purpose? Accidents don't have a purpose. You spill milk, it's spilt milk. It doesn't have a purpose. It wasn't intended. There is no ultimate purpose on atheism or naturalism. Now, you may be thinking, this guy, he looks like he's Pakistani, maybe Asian, he's been practicing all of his life. Well, that wasn't the case. I also found myself in a position in my life at a point where I questioned life. I didn't even, I was at the place where it wasn't even a question about whether God exists or not. I was in a place where I wasn't concerned about the question whether God exists or not. I was just too busy, like most of us are these days. So from one perspective, I was an atheist. You can see me as someone that lived like an atheist or a naturalist. And I found myself in the very same position, because what I realized was, if you logically follow through with the implications of atheism and naturalism, that's what we're discussing here. If you logically follow through with the implications, you end up at the realization that there is no ultimate purpose to existence. And that creates a lot of angst. It creates a lot of anxiety inside the human being. I suffered from anxiety and depression related to these existential questions for a very long time. And I thought through these things as well, and I tried to find answers, but I realized that logically speaking, there were no answers, at least to start off with the question of purpose, ultimate purpose. Now, what do I do in this position? I thought to myself. And as have many philosophers throughout history, what do we do when you end up in this position? Now, there are a few ways people have tried to deal with this type of existential nihilism, if you like, that there is no ultimate purpose to life. One of the ways was, you had the existentialist philosophers, and what they suggested, at least most of them, they said, look, you end up in a position where there is no purpose to life. You recognize this, acknowledge this. But now what you have to do is you have to live with purpose. You have to give yourselves purpose. You have to make purpose up for yourselves. And they would present this idea in a very eloquent and uplifting way. And to be honest, when you're in that position, there's only so much you could do. So I commend them for that. However, the thing about human nature is we don't like to be lied to, and we don't like lying to ourselves. And essentially what we're doing is, when we say, I have no ultimate purpose, but I'm going to give myself purpose, what we're essentially doing is we're saying, I'm going to make purpose up. I'm going to make purpose up for myself. In other words, if you want to look at it in a crude way, we're actually lying to ourselves just to get by. And that didn't sit well with me. It didn't work for too long, right? And it doesn't work for many people. So that doesn't work. And the other alternative, if you like, was you can reduce it down to biology. You can say, well, I've evolved and I'm here, and the only purpose to my existence, this accidental existence, is to propagate my genes, as Richard Dawkins would have you believe in the selfish gene. Now, if you want to reduce it to such a level, then be my guest, do that. But that's no different from eating and sleeping. We do these things anyway. Yet we still ask the deeper questions of life. What is the purpose of my existence? And what's really funny is, recently I watched a clip by Richard Dawkins, and he's gone even further with his understanding in regards to the purpose of our material existence, at least. And he even says that the human being, we're nothing but just disposable, and I'm paraphrasing his words, we're just nothing but disposable machines for our genes. Now, well, that's going to really help us finding our ultimate purpose, right? That type of outlook, right? So that didn't really help me, and that didn't work for me either. So now I'm thinking, okay, there seems to be no avenue here as to, or way I can take out of this conundrum, out of this problem. So I thought, you know what? Maybe value is what I need to think about. Human life is valuable. It's sacred. We all acknowledge this. We all realize this. We all understand this. Even atheists and naturalists understand this. Humanism. It's based on one of the tenets, the fundamental tenets is that human life is sacred. It's valuable. So I said, you know what? I have no purpose to live, but life being valuable, that should be enough to keep me going. Well, when I inquired and I thought about the question of value, you soon realize that, again, on atheism and naturalism, there is no special value to human life. Now, let me just give you guys an example just to put things into perspective. We have a pen here, a very nice Manchester University, I believe it's by someone else. Or whoever it's by. It's a nice little purple pen in my hand, right? If I was to ask you guys, what's more valuable, me or this pen? What would you say? I want you to think about it for a second. Most of us, hopefully all of us, would say, well, you're more valuable, right? Imagine if I put you guys in a situation and I said, look, or imagine hypothetically for a second that you guys suffer from a particular condition. You have an anger problem which can't be resolved by any medication. So what the doctors told you is that whenever you get angry, you have to express your anger. And to do that, he's given you a hammer to carry around with you. Okay? I know it's a bit of a crazy example, but just go with it for a second, yeah? You've got a hammer in your pocket. And imagine for some reason you get really angry right now and you have a choice to make. You have a choice to make between smashing me as a human being and smashing this pen. What would you smash? It's a question. What would you guys smash? Yeah, hopefully everyone will say the pen, right? It's because we realize it's almost intuitive that human life is valuable and precious. Yet what I'm positing to you here is that on naturalism and atheism, and when we understand this, like I said, it all boils down to what? Blind, random physical processes. There is literally no difference between me and the pen. Now, on hearing this, you may be outraged. You may think, what is he talking about? You're conscious, you're rational, you feel, you're a human being, right? You're alive. We'll say all of these things. We're probably thinking of these things right now. Now, I can understand the sentiments that we have. However, let's not get sentimental, because at the end of the day, there's no difference. It's just one arrangement of atoms and molecules as opposed to another. And these ideas that you may be just firing off in your heads right now, that he's more conscious, he's more valuable, he's rational, he's intelligent, hopefully you think he's intelligent, but whatever the case is, all of these things that you think, these are simply, on atheism and naturalism, these are simply ideas that you may have picked up from society, may have thought up in your minds right now, but they have no intrinsic value, because they are a result of nothing but chemical firings in your brain, which are a result of atoms and molecules. That's all it is. So essentially, there is no difference. There's no need to get sentimental about this. There's no difference between me, the pen, the table, the chair, the computer, or anything else. The only difference is that these are just different arrangements of matter. That's all it is. Now, hopefully we can start to appreciate something here, which is that on atheism and naturalism, the human being is being pushed into a corner. You're being reduced down, or reduced to the point where you can't even account for those things you know to be true as a human being. The things that make you human, purpose, value. But if you can't make sense of these things anymore, at least we should realize there's a bit of a disparity. There's something that's not adding up. This worldview or outlook or ideology, whatever you want to call it, because I know some atheists have a problem me calling atheism an ideology or a worldview. Whatever you want to call it, it has implications, and the implications here are that it strips you from being able to account for those very things you know to be true as a human being. And that is problematic. That is highly problematic. We've seen some of the atrocities that such views have resulted in throughout history, and we can see or potentially think of problems that such views can cause in the future. Now, I'm talking about logical implications here, guys, right? I'm not just talking about wishy-washy things. I'm saying let's logically think about it. When you do, these are the conclusions you come to, right? Now, let's explore this a bit further. Something else which is very integral to human life, human beings, which are ethics, morals. As human beings, almost every action we take is a moral and ethical action. It has implications, moral implications. And we consider this as human beings. However, what I want to suggest here is that on atheism and naturalism, there is no account for objective moral values and truths. Right? Now, let me define what I mean by objective so we're very clear here. When I say objective moral values and truths, we're talking about objectivity, which means that it's not subject to the human being or human understanding. The morals are external to the human being. Right? Now, from an Islamic perspective, which I'll discuss in a second, we can ontologically ground our morals in God. However, on atheism and naturalism, you don't have an anchor. It's just subjective. All you can do, well, what options do you have? Let's just engage with just think through some of the options we have on atheism and naturalism. Well, one of them is social consensus. Society comes together and decides what is wrong and what is right, and that's what we base our morals on. Well, hold on a second. So social consensus throughout history, we have seen examples of where the consensus of a society, for example, Nazi Germany, have resulted in some atrocious things, right? And if you were to say 10 or 15 people get together and say X is wrong, well, say 10 or 15 other people get together and say X is right. Who is right? There's no objectivity there. It's just subjective opinions against each other. Well, social consensus doesn't make morals or give us an objective foundation for morals. Well, what else is there? Well, you may say it's my own views and ideas. Again, it's your subjective opinions. You may want to reduce morals down to evolution, right? Now, obviously, if you look at the experts in the field, they will tell you that evolution doesn't give you morality. It may give you the tools you need to be able to come up with moral outlooks. However, morality doesn't render, evolution does not render morality objective in any way, shape, or form. Because if our morals are subject to evolution, they're subject to change. Darwin noticed something very interesting, and he mentioned this, where he highlighted that if we had evolved under different conditions, we would have a totally different moral outlook. Imagine, and he gives the example of hive bees. Sorry, John, I don't want to steal your water. Is that you?
That's not mine. Let's go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So Darwin gave a very beautiful example of hive bees, and he said, look, if we were reared under the same condition as hive bees, the mothers of the bees would think it a sacred duty to kill the fertile daughters, and no one would think anything of it. Hamza, in his book, The Divine Reality, makes another similar point. He says, look, if we had evolved under the same conditions as nurse sharks, we would find it okay to rape our partners, because that's what they do, and no one would think anything of it. So evolution does not render morality objective in any way, shape, or form. It's just subject to moral change. And I believe John in his book highlights, well, no one's saying, we've stopped evolving or morals have stopped evolving. So it shows it's still subject to change over time. So if you don't have evolution as an explanation for objective morality, then to be honest, there are some other ideas out there, such as consequentialism, etc. And I may deal with that if John brings that up. But the point being is that on atheism and naturalism, you do not have an account for objective moral values and truths and duties. You're left with just morality being subjective. And what's the problem here? The issue here is then that if morality is just your subjective opinion, then it means nothing. Hence, when atheists point the finger towards religious people and towards Muslims and Islam, and based on their limited understanding of the text, assert certain things and make certain moral claims, and they express those claims as if they're objectively true, this is objectively wrong, this is bad, this is evil, well, they're not in any position to do so because they can't ground their morality in any objective way, in anything. That's highly problematic, right? You can't have your cake and eat it. It doesn't make any sense. So if you're going to make claims, moral claims, you have to first ground or show us how you ground your morality, how you deem it to be objective, and how you make sense of that. That's if you accept morality is objective. And if you don't, well, then you're not in any position to make any claims anymore. So hopefully, you can see the picture developing now. There's loads of areas I can go into, but time doesn't permit me to do that. But hopefully we can start to appreciate how atheism and naturalism, as I've said before, it reduces you down to the point where you can't account for those very things that make you human. And that is the absurdity of atheism and naturalism. But unfortunately, many people don't follow through. Most atheists don't get the time to think about these realities and think about the logical implications of atheism and naturalism. Hence, they don't worry about these things. They're too busy. But I really encourage the atheists to really think about these realities, because these are the things that make you human, right? It's very important to think about these things. You can't dismiss them. Now, the last thing I want to touch upon is this whole idea of meaningful happiness. As human beings, we want to be happy. That's another integral aspect of our life. We chase happiness. But again, on atheism and naturalism, you can't have meaningful happiness. And this is the reason why. Now, going back to my story, I found myself in a position where there's no ultimate purpose, there is no value to human existence, there's no grounding for objective morals. It's just all becoming meaningless for me at this point. So when I don't have answers to these fundamental questions, how can I expect to be happy in any meaningful way? Let me give you guys a bit of a thought experiment quickly. Imagine for a second you fall asleep right now. And as you fall asleep, you go into a really deep sleep and you wake up, and the next thing you realize, you're not in this auditorium anymore. You're on a train, and the train's traveling at 200 miles an hour down some track. The windows are closed, the doors are closed. What's the first questions that come to your mind? Who am I? Not who am I? Where am I going? Where's the who put me on the train? Where's the train going to stop? What's going on? And these questions will be natural to us, and they'll cause a lot of anxiety. Now, as you're engaging with these questions, imagine for a moment you're presented with this amazing meal, a 5-star meal, and you taste the food, and it's the most amazing food you've ever tasted. Now, you may be temporarily distracted and experience a sense of joy and happiness, but is that going to last? Firstly, and secondly, is that going to be a meaningful type of happiness or joy if you don't have the answers to those fundamental questions you've just asked as to how you got on the train and where it's going? No. And that's the reality of life. We have these pressing questions that we ask as human beings. It's a part of our nature to engage with these questions. Yet on atheism and naturalism, we find no answers. And that's highly problematic, because here we find a contradiction between these outlooks on life and human nature itself. And at the very least, that should get us to question our position of atheism and naturalism. Because human beings don't like living in contradiction. Human beings don't like living in this state of dissonance. We need to find balance, and you're not going to find it. Your nature is never going to be in conformity with naturalism or atheism. Now, hopefully we can see that atheism, it just doesn't make sense of those most fundamental things we know to be true as human beings. Now, how does Islam answer the question? The next minute, just quickly. From the perspective of purpose, God says clearly in the Quran, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. God answers the question of purpose. He created us to know Him and to worship Him. And what's beautiful about the Quran is that this is the purpose of our existence, and the entire Quran revolves around this fundamental message. It's all related to purpose. And that's amazing. In other words, the entire Quran revolves around the purpose of human existence. Not only tells us what our purpose is, but helps us and aids us in fulfilling it. Right? And that's something profound about the Quran. Also, from the perspective of values throughout the Quran, I'll give you maybe an example in my rebuttal, but throughout the Quran, God speaks about human value, how human life is sacred, how the children of Adam have been given this sacred value in and of themselves. God has created them as a special creation. So value, God gives us value from that perspective, and not only us value, but our actions value too, what we do and how we live our lives. Thirdly, when it comes to happiness, God says in the Quran, indeed, in the remembrance of God do hearts find rest. And very interesting, and this sort of highlights the internal coherence of the Quran here. When God says, in the remembrance of God do hearts find rest, I'm going to carry on in my rebuttal, hopefully. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me. I'm here on behalf of Atheist Alliance International that you sent the invitation to. And also, thank you very much for coming. This wouldn't be much of an event without you. Now, I don't call myself an atheist. I call myself a non-believer. And from what Imran has just said, you'll understand perhaps why I do that. But I come in friendship. I'm an ex-science teacher, and I don't want to alienate my class. You outnumber me, and that would be a very foolish thing to do. Nevertheless, I may say some things that you find a bit challenging. I'm going to ask you some questions, first of all. Are you all believers? Put your hands up. Yeah, you're all believers? Are there any non-believers here? Okay, not many. Is there anyone here who is a non-believer but doesn't want to put their hand up? Thank you for that. So, here we go. Play sideshow. Okay, right. So, the question is life absurd without God? Or, get it your way around, is life without God absurd? Yes. Can I go home now? It is. And I also contend that it's not only absurd without God, but it's more absurd with God. And this question makes two assumptions. First of all, it assumes that there is a God. And secondly, it assumes that life shouldn't be absurd. Well, I want to examine those two propositions. The questioner obviously thinks that life shouldn't be absurd. And I'd like to ask, why? Why do they think that? To my mind, that's the real question. Okay? So let's take a look at absurd, first of all, and find out what it means. Well, the dictionary gives wildly unreasonable, illogical, or inappropriate. Here's an example. The allegations are patently absurd. I say that's a judgment call, an opinion. For example, you and I might agree that that statement is absurd, wouldn't we? Yes? What about this one then? Is that so absurd? That you might think that's absurd, I might think that's absurd, somebody else might not. It really depends on whether the homework belongs to you or not. So it's a matter of opinion. Now, I would like to say that some of this comes from the fact of human egocentrism. We all live inside our heads looking out. So naturally, we think that we're at the center of everything. We used to think that our planet was at the center of the solar system and that the sun went round it. We now know that's not true. And we used to think that God made the universe for us. There is no evidence for this, and it's a very narcissistic viewpoint. Let's examine that claim. Did God make the universe for us? Is that a reasonable claim or is that an absurd statement? Well, we now know that the universe began around 13.8 billion years ago. We used to say it was 13.7. This is, of course, an estimate. And recently the estimate was improved. We now say that it's 13.8. But mankind only arrived on Earth about 200,000 years ago. So a reasonable question is, what happened in between? Why the gap of 13 billion 799 million 800,000 years? Isn't that absurd? So, as an ex-science teacher, I want to go into a bit of scientific reality here. Scientific observed facts, repeatedly, shareably observed facts, and explanations, theories, which are mental models based on those facts. So we know that Earth actually orbits the sun. And we know that the sun is a star. And it's a star in a galaxy that we call the Milky Way. You used to be able to look up and see it. It's a sort of whitish smudge across the sky. But now we pollute the sky, night sky, with so much light, it's become invisible to us in Manchester. Now there's about 100 billion, some people say about 200 billion other suns in the Milky Way. And there's about 100 billion, some people say 200 billion other Milky Ways, galaxies like the Milky Way. And on average, thanks to the Hubble telescope, we found out that stars, other suns, also have planets orbiting them. In fact, on average, a star has about 7 planets. So, Earth is insignificant. It's only one planet out of about, now I can't say that number, it's even unimaginable let's try to imagine it. We've gone past the millions. The next 3 noughts will be billions. Then we go to trillions. I don't know, quadrillions, pentillions. I'm making it up now. Sesquillions. What is that number? Let's just try to imagine it. I want you to pretend that you can count up to 1 million. Now, to make this doable, I'm going to suggest that you count at the rate of 1 every second. Okay? Now, that's slow at the beginning. 1, 2, 3. But when you're getting close to 1 million, it takes you 999,999, 3 seconds just to say that one number. So let's average it. Let's say we're going to count throughout at the rate of 1 a second, and we're not going to go to sleep, but we are going to stop to eat and go to the toilet. How long do you think it would take to get up to 1 million? Any guesses?
2 weeks.
Somebody?
2 days.
How many days, sorry? A few days, right? Okay, that's one guess. Any other guesses? 31 years, that's a very big guess. Any more? I'll take one more guess. Yeah?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Well done. You're a mathematician, eh? Well done. Yeah, it would take us about 2 weeks, not sleeping, but eating and pooing. Okay? That's just the 1 million. We've only gone up to the 6th nought from the right. If you want to count to 1 billion, that's 1,000 of those 2 weeks. So that's 40 years. Counting at that rate, not sleeping. Okay? So imagine how long it's going to take to count up that number. The point I'm making is Earth is really, really insignificant. And meanwhile, on Earth, each one of us is just a single individual out of a total population of humans of 7.4 billion. It's probably more than that now. That's an old figure. So, however you look at it, numerically, we are monumentally insignificant, whether you compare us to the population or to the universe. Now let's take a look at our lives. Average human life is 79 years. Let's compare that to the life of the Earth. The Earth has been around for about 4.5 billion years. The universe, as we said earlier, has been around for about 13.8 billion years. So however you look at it, whether in terms of time, duration, durability, or in terms of number, we are monumentally insignificant. We are ants. But, as Imran was explaining earlier, we're ants with delusions. We have delusions of our importance. We think there's some ultimate purpose for us. That's very conceited. So, are you important? Am I important? No. Are our opinions important? No. So, what actually is absurd? Thinking that we are important. That's absurd. It's a delusion of grandeur. So, let's go back to the question. Is life without God absurd? Well, we've dealt with absurd. Now let's deal with God. We found that most of you believe that there is one. I don't. But the questioner assumes that there must be a God.
This is really a different debate because we've moved on now from talking about whether life is absurd or not. In the same way that Imran moved on from talking about absurdity to talking about morality. So I'm going to talk about the evidence for God, and sadly there isn't any. As I said, it's another debate. But let's assume that I'm right. And if there is no God, then there's no option for life to be with God and therefore not be absurd because there is a God. Do you see that as a sort of a double negative there? If there is no God, we're stuck in a universe without God, like it or not. It doesn't matter whether we're absurd or whether our lives are absurd. That's a judgment that nobody can make. There is no authority to decide, to have that opinion. Makes no sense to claim that without God, our lives are absurd. On the contrary, I would contend that life with God is more absurd. Let's look at what some believers do. Now, I know that you're all academics and you're all moderates, and I'm thankful for that because I don't want to be macheted. But you see the point. Some believers are fundamentalists. Some believers are radicalized. And the problem is they get up to some pretty horrible stuff. Thank you. I'm not going to read these out. I'm going to assume you can read. You shouldn't be here if you can't. Some of those atrocities are committed because people believe that they have another life to go to, that this isn't their only existence. That thought devalues life itself, because what's promised is magic. It's eternal. It's bliss. It's got everything you could wish for. So this life now is puny and trivial. And you can get up to all sorts of things here because it doesn't matter. All you've got to do is ask for your forgiveness and say a few prayers, and you will go up there where life is perfect forever. And that gives us the idea of martyrdom. The idea that we can live on after death devalues our real existence and takes away our responsibility to behave well towards each other. Assuming that you can die for a God, that dying for a God is a good thing, inspires mass murder. Let's take a look at it from my point of view. Wouldn't that be absurd? Look, here we have an atheist bomber who is dying to please no God. Somebody said, I forget who it was, that atheists have nothing to live for. It's the opposite. I think it was Ricky Gervais. It's the opposite. We have nothing to die for. You're the ones with the prize. I'm not. Here's another ridiculous slide. Look, this person thinks that she can please her God by committing atrocities. Then she has another thought. Hang on. What if there isn't one? And a very famous atheist said, I wouldn't die for a God. I might be wrong. Now, purpose. Imran talked a lot about purpose. It's part of this human egocentricity. It's a narcissistic assumption that we should have some sort of ultimate purpose. And to assume that it is somehow dispensed from above, downwards onto us. There's no evidence for that. The evidence shows that the development of sophistication and complexity is actually bottom up. Millions of years ago, billions of years ago, very simple creatures with next to no purpose other than bare survival existed. And what Imran did was he conflated together all of life in one, into one category. And he said, look, the hive bees have no purpose. So it's wrong to assume that we're like them. And it is indeed, because there's been a progression. We've got simple creatures with little purpose, sophisticated creatures with more purpose. And morality, that's another debate as well. And I could also spend another 20 minutes on it. But it isn't objective, but it's unfair to call it subjective because it's based on evolved adaptations over which we have overlain social determinations. And it's contingent. Killing is not per se wrong, only in certain conditions.
Thank you, John. You have run out of time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, so with introductions out of the way, we will move on to rebuttals. So each side has 10 minutes to rebut the other side, starting with Imran. Again, time will start once you get to the podium.
Okay, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulullah. Okay, John, that was a bit of a biryani, to be honest. Just to give you a context of what I mean by biryani, a bit of a mix and match of everything. So I'm going to try to deal with this the best I can.
I like biryani.
Next time I see you, I'll definitely bring you some. So, look, John, one of the things he said which startled me, which was, we're not important, our opinions are not important. He mentions this in his book too. Now, if that's the case, then John, why come here today and present a case for your position, right? First and foremost. It gets better. So why come here and present the case for anti-theism in particular? Because that's how you represent yourself, that you're an anti-theist. And secondly, why write a book which is, reasonably thick and is quite a long read if your opinions don't mean anything? Honestly, because much of this book, John, much of this book is full of your opinions, right? Essentially.
Thank you for promoting it for me.
That's no problem. If you guys want to read it, go ahead. Here it is. Yeah. But so I don't get that. There's a bit of a contradiction here, John. So I would like you to clarify that specific point. If your opinions mean nothing, then why are you on this trajectory as to, promoting your outlook and having debates and having discussions and making videos on YouTube, writing books, coming here today, etc.? That would be interesting to know from your perspective. Secondly, so one of the ways John tried to highlight that life is absurd, he began with the earth, and he tried to highlight earth is insignificant from the perspective of, although I don't see how this is related to what we're discussing, but nevertheless, I'll address these points. He said the earth is insignificant because it's one planet amongst, I don't know, the number was a huge number of other planets that are out there. Well, that's one way of looking at it. That's your opinion, John, as to what we're seeing here, what we're observing here. Another way of looking at it, another opinion could be, well, that's what makes Earth special. that there is so much out there that this one blue little dot, Carl Sagan on one of his covers, I don't remember what the book was called, but he called it the picture where he had the blue little dot on the cover. It was fascinating that amongst all of this vast space, there is this one planet that has life, and that too intelligent life. That, I would say, another way of looking at it, that makes Earth very significant from that perspective. And secondly, life, intelligent life. Not only any form of life, but we have intelligent life here. So you can flip that and look at it the other way too. So that's my specific opinion on that. Moving on, you mentioned something about, let me just get my notes. So you highlight that you made a statement that, look, life is absurd, or life is absurd on atheism and naturalism, but it's more absurd with God. You didn't actually go ahead and really show us as to why that's the case. Now, obviously, I don't know if did you get a chance to read the Quran or look into Islam before coming to this debate?
Not a lot, I confess.
Okay, if you had, you probably would have changed some of the slides that you had there, because you had some generalizations that you shared there. Again, you shared some of your opinions in regards to what religious people do or have done, etc. Now, your book is full of such examples as well. You obviously predominantly attack the Christian tradition as to some of the bloodshed and the evils that have happened. But just for a second, if I move over here, just to share this with you. Now, I would agree with you. Obviously, now throughout history, religions have been, and there have been some pockets of Islam and Muslims too that have done some atrocious things, no doubt. I'm not denying this. But so have the anti-theists too, right? Those that deny God. Now, there's a very interesting book that I'd like to give you the reference of. It's called War and Peace in Islam. Definitely have a read. And what the author has done, he's sort of tallied from the year 0 to 2008 the number of death tolls which have resulted from different groups throughout history. And interestingly, Christianity is right up there, and Christianity is right up there with a figure of, let me see here. So it shares the largest with between 119.42 million and 236.66 million victims, right? Medium of 178.04. Interestingly, the second group that's up there, any guesses?
Well, probably atheists, but
yes, and the anti-theist group.
I would contest that description.
Well, you can contest it with the author of this book. I'm sure he would like to hear from you. So it has a figure of 124.41 million deaths from the year 0 to the year 2008. So look, if we're going to play a numbers game, John, as you've done in your book as well, it goes both ways, right? So it's not really an argument against religion. Now, you mentioned something about you can do whatever you like in this world and you'll get paradise up there. Well, that's not the Islamic tradition. Let me just give you some information regarding what we believe as Muslims. This life is extremely significant from the perspective of how we engage in this life. We are told to do good, live as upright human beings, serve humanity. And it's for doing the good that we do in this life that we get an eternal paradise, right? And there's a stark warning for those that don't do this, because paradise it'll just be given to you because you do whatever you like. You have to put in the work here. So there's a very interesting philosophy there that I really recommend that you look into further for your research. You said something, you said a point about, that I said the example of the hive bees, and that they didn't have any purpose. I didn't say that. You misquoted me. I was referring to Darwin, and Darwin highlighted that if we had evolved under other conditions, different conditions, our moral outlook of right and wrong, if you want to call it, that would have been as is seen by the bees, if you could say such a thing, which is we right for the mother bee to kill its fertile daughters, etc. So it'll just be a different set of morals, if you like, because of different conditions that we've evolved under, right?
Species.
Yes, but the point is that the point that he's highlighting, and the point I was highlighting, that evolution renders morality subjective, is subject to change, is subject to the conditions that we develop under. It doesn't render morality objective in any way, shape, or form, nor does it give us an understanding of what good is and bad is, what right is, what wrong is. It's not concerned with this, right? It's an unconscious process. It doesn't have an intent. It doesn't have a mind. It doesn't have a direction.
Correct.
Right? So there's problems there. That's why I highlight that. If you look at it from that perspective, you end up in the position where, again, at best, morality is subjective. Right? That's all it is. Let me see if there's anything else here. So another thing I wanted to engage with you, and I will probably bring this up in the discussion section. You have a very interesting outlook on what is evidence, and hence what leads to knowledge, right? Now, you sort of say that evidence is what's observable, what's repeatable, and what is shareable, right? So you seem to take a view which is that of scientism. right? A type of scientism, right? And I don't want to label you, but you can give us clarity on that specific
I knew
point.
that would come up, yes.
But the point is that it seems like, according to you, that what science is the only way to truth, or the method of science is the only way to truth, right? Now, I want to know, if that's the case, then again, why haven't you employed that throughout your book, right? Why didn't you employ that throughout your discussion today? Why didn't you stick to those? And you mentioned your specific definition, but you didn't stick to those. You gave a lot of your opinions, and a lot of opinions which I believe were incorrect, based on incorrect facts, etc. So there's a lot of inconsistency there, and I'd like to know how you sort of reconcile those two things. Anything else? 2 minutes. Okay, so going back to my point and just finishing off where I left off. Now, like we said, the discussion isn't about God's existence, right? This is not the discussion of today's topic. It's, is life absurd without God? And what I was highlighting is that, yes, from an atheistic, naturalistic perspective, life is indeed absurd. It doesn't make any sense. And then I didn't finish in my initial delivery, which was, I started talking about how Islam makes sense of these realities. So we looked at purpose, we looked at value, we looked at happiness, right? Now, regarding value, let me just give you another insight as well. So one specific example you can look at and research further, because we said that God is the one that gives value to life. There is a very interesting story in Surah Al-Ma'idah, which is the table spread, as it's translated in the English, of Cain and Abel. You've probably heard this from the Christian tradition as well. They have a very similar story, or same story, but with different perspectives regarding certain things. But what's interesting there is that Cain and Abel were the two sons of Adam, and they basically, one of the brothers murdered the other out of envy, and that was the first murder that took place on this earth. And it was at that moment God instilled a law in place which stands till today and will stand till the day of judgment, which is that human life is valuable. That if you were to take one innocent life, it is as if you took the life of the whole of humanity. And if you were to save one innocent life, it is as if you have saved the whole of humanity. That's value, right? That God has given us value from that perspective. So what I'm saying is that Islam comprehensively answers these fundamental mental questions that we have as human beings. Now, I'm not saying this is clear evidence or proof for Islam, right? I don't want you to misquote me there. What I am saying, however, is that these are clear signs for the intelligent individual to pick up on. That atheism and naturalism doesn't sit well with my nature. It doesn't fit well with me. It doesn't make sense. It's against what I know as a human being. It strips me from being able to account for those things I know as a human being. And Islam, on the other hand, is in line with your nature from these perspectives, because it answers these questions. It provides the answers. And as human beings, something I want us to all consider today, as human beings, we're not logical robots, right? We don't believe things and follow things and even inquire about things based on whether they have been logically established or proved or not. I'll finish that one later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Where to begin? What Imran is doing there, and he admits it really himself because he has to use both words, is he's conflating atheism with naturalism. Atheism is a lack of belief in the claims of believers. Until believers can come up with some evidence for God, then the fallback position is the same with regard to, the Loch Ness Monster. Until there's some evidence for it, we're right not to be, to be suspicious, to be non-believers. And to get around that problem, what Imran has had to do is tack on naturalism to atheism so that he can rubbish that rather than the target, which is just not believing. I've got some brilliant cartoons about this, which I should have put together to show you on the screen. But I don't call myself an atheist. And let me ask you a question. Hands up if you don't believe in fairies. Hands up. Come on, be honest. It's not scary. You can put your hand up if you don't believe in fairies. Okay? Most of us don't believe in fairies. Should we have a special word for you? Are you atheists then? We don't need this word, do we? It doesn't make sense to group people together on the basis of something they lack. That's why Imran has to actually target naturalism rather than atheism. Now, he says that anti-theists have committed atrocities. And he's right. There was Stalin. He was a famous non-believer. He committed atrocities. Pol Pot, he committed atrocities. And there's some other more dubious ones, because Hitler, of course, was actually a Catholic. And I'm not sure about Mao, whether he was a Confucian or what. But the point is, yes, non-believers have committed atrocities, but they haven't done it for belief. They haven't done it for no God. They've done it for greed, for power. The same as any other person that commits atrocity. And that's true as well of the theists. Christians have done some appalling things, and Muslims too. Only recently, we had a man shot in Streatham because he got out of jail and stabbed people. And the ISIS are claiming it as one of theirs. Now, I know you're all moderates, and good for you, but the point is that Islam or Christianity or any religion can be the gateway drug for fundamentalism. There are a lot of bewildered Muslim parents in Birmingham right now who are stunned that their children, their beloved children, went and fought for ISIS and got killed. Now, morality. It's changed. Thank heavens it's changed. Would we want to go back to the days of witch burning? Would we want to go back to the days of, and it still happens in some countries, noticeably theocratic Muslim countries, stoning to death female adulterers? Would we want to, or would we prefer morality to change, to get more modern? I think the latter. Thank heavens morality has changed. We've grown up. We're not Stone Age men anymore. And I expected Imran to level the accusation of scientism at me. It's a word that scientists don't use. It's a word that theists use to denigrate science. People love to label other people that they don't like. I mean, there's lots of labels for non-members of your club. It used to be heathens, then it became Gentiles, then it became infidels, and now it's atheists. Don't go in for this labeling. Scientism is another label. They've stuck ism on the end in order to make it sound like an ideology. Like conservatism, liberalism, socialism. It's not. Science is not an ideology. It has no principles, no values. It is a method of discovery. It's investigation. That's what it is. How the information is used is not down to scientists. It's down to politicians. It's down to businessmen. Scientism is a negative word to level at science with a finger of blame. Don't use it. Now, Imran's right. My book is about my opinion. Of course it is. That's all we have. But I didn't say we couldn't have them. What I said was they're unimportant. My book has made not a ripple in space-time. The universe has gone on as if it never happened. That's because my opinion doesn't matter. The reason I do this, he asked me why I do this, it's because I'm against unnecessary division. All that religions do is set people against people. It wouldn't be so bad if there was only one. But unfortunately, one religion claims to be the true one, and another religion claims to be the true one, and that's a recipe for conflict. I say none of them are true until there's evidence for a God. Give me some. Give me some evidence, not argument. It's a common mistake for people to think that argument is evidence. It isn't. So, purpose. How much longer? Oh, thank you. Purpose. I've got to speed up. Just because we want an ultimate purpose doesn't mean that there is one. That's like a child wanting something for Christmas. Humans are not special. Does a mosquito have value? Hey? Who's the judge? It's us. Do we have a conscience that we have eradicated smallpox? No, because it's humans first, disease well down the list. Value is a matter of judgment. It's not falling on us from the sky. We have the power. Imran sounded as though he was elevating humans to the level of judges. That's something of a claim. So, yes, he claimed that morals, this is where he conflated the whole of life into one category. Hive bees and sharks, and none of us have any objective. Well, look at it's a progression. Simple animals have simple purposes. Plants, what purposes do they have? Just to survive. So saying that evolution is a boogeyman is entirely wrong, because we're at the top end. You know, we are the most highly evolved, and I shouldn't really use that term because it implies that there is a direction, which there isn't. Thank you.
Okay, stop sharing. Okay. Oh, Blay joined us. Oh, would you believe it? Stop screen share. Blay, you're here. Hello.
Hello.
I think you might be muted. Ah, good. You're not muted. Let me just take down. I've been covering for you. I don't know what happened. Obviously, there was a mix-up in our arrangements, but we've decided, the audience and I have decided to reschedule you because we've actually spent the allotted time on a debate, which I used to fill up the space instead of you and I doing our show.
It was quite a frightening debate.
Oh, you've gone muted again. Yes. You watched some of it, did you? Yes.
I did, yes.
Yes, it was. I was invited by I was invited by the Islamic Society of Manchester University to debate one of their top dogs on the subject of is life absurd without God? And I enjoyed it. It was quite a fun debate.
It was quite fearsome.
Never mind.
I didn't see the audience when you asked
Yes, well,
how many of them were believers, but I assumed you were in a distinct minority.
it was the lion's den. Yes,
Yes.
that's right. Anyway, we've used up the time that we allocate to
All sorts
this
of
show.
Yeah, I would have gone in a different way. I think, but anyway, that's just me.
Yeah, well, we all have our own way. Yes, maybe we can talk about that when you do come on the show.
Oh, no, I don't know. I don't want to get drawn onto religion. I'd be much safer staying with the ethics. But I mean, both of you mentioned morality and ethics, and I don't think I really agreed with what either of you said. But
no, it's very much at the cutting edge, isn't it?
But no, it's a cheap shot to say that atheists don't have any ethics. It really is.
Yes.
It's because I guess when I do
really.
When I do well, anyway, it's all off topic. What do you want from me?
Well, what I want now, because we've overrun our time, what I want really with you is to reschedule you into July. Can you do some Wednesday in July?
I guess. If I put it in my diary, then there's a chance I'll know.
Yes. How did we contact you in the end? Was it through Rosanna?
Yes. The problem was I was in a Zoom meeting. Of course, this is my quiet life.
Yes.
When you phoned, I was actually in another meeting. But I'm afraid that's how it is.
Yes.
Virtual Westminster, which I'm here to tell you is a great deal more pleasant than real life Westminster.
I think so, yes.
I don't think anything is going to get me back into the crowds and the security and the police in flak jackets with machine guns. No, it's much more fun at home.
Yes, I like being locked down too, especially with a connection like this.
Yeah.
So why don't we, I'm not sure how we best communicate, whether it's by email or Twitter message or messenger or whatever.
I'm surprised that how few people do old-fashioned email. I'm perfectly capable of that. I like it's about, you have a green screen, don't you? I
do. Yes.
This is my first time using StreamYard, so I haven't set up the virtual pub and all that, but I do have a virtual pub in Zoom.
Yeah. Look, I can take you to our wine cellar if you like. Or you can be in the gallery. Do you like the gallery? It's fun, isn't it?
I think I preferred the library, but...
Yes, okay. Well, I've done enough fiddling with it now, I think. So email me then and tell me which Wednesday evening in July is suitable for you.
Okay.
And we'll set you up again.
Okay. As I remember the format, you were going to interview me and record it.
That's right. Yes. Well, although this is live now, it becomes a podcast after it's ended. It's immediately available as a podcast forever.
Okay. Well, you'll know what your members want to hear. I mean, you could pump me on the politicians versus the the large US corporates, because I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but people assume that everyone's in bed with Mark Zuckerberg, and I'm here to tell you that this side of the Atlantic, politicians are pretty hostile, more hostile than me, I would say. And I'm not going to defend Zuckerberg for a minute. I think when it comes to ethics, he's a good example of how a lot of modern commerce trolls along the bottom, and if there's a bit of revolt from users, they move up a notch and then head down again. So we could talk about that if you like.
Social media has had an enormous impact on ethics, hasn't it?
And not all to the good, I'm afraid. In fact, I guess I've changed my views. I actually blame the internet per se. I think to sloganize it, if you were a weird person with weird beliefs before the internet, then you were the only nutter in the village. But the magic of the internet is it puts you in touch with the other 7 people on the planet who share your crazy views. And then you're no longer a nutter, you're an oppressed minority.
Yeah.
And this is why Flat Earth, the Flat Earth Society is stronger than ever. And to believe in a flat Earth now, you need all sorts of supporting weird beliefs, including the airliner windows distort the horizon. NASA and EASA and the Soviets are in some wicked conspiracy to show us these fake photographs of space. And when people sail around the world in their yachts, they don't really go around the world. You need a whole load of supporting beliefs that you wouldn't if you just lived in a quiet village in the middle of England and never went out of it. But nonetheless, people are putting this stuff around. In fact, you could pump me on it if you like, because I happen to know from my interest in aviation that KLM suspended a senior captain because she posted on an internet forum that she believed in a flat earth. And that prompted a very interesting debate among the professional pilots, half of whom was saying, they were saying, I don't want to lose my career because one night I say something silly on the web. And the other half was saying, oh, come on, wait a minute. You really shouldn't be in charge of an aircraft going across an ocean if you think the Earth is flat. There's going to be some serious debate about when the fuel runs out and so on. So, yes, it was really quite polarized. But, well, just in case you think that belief in a flat Earth is something we're all just going to joke about, just think about it in an airline captain and you'll realize that maybe it's not such a joke.
It's serious, yes. I don't know how they cope with time zones when they land and the time is not the same as it was when they took off. But anyway, we'll talk about that another day. I thoroughly agree with you, though. As an ex-science teacher, there was often some naughty person in the back of the class whose object was just to alienate the teacher, was just to use the teacher as an Aunt Sally, to be hostile towards education. And now those people, those 13-year-olds have grown up, they've got a laptop and a connection, and they're online as podcasters with a big audience, and they are, what do they call it? There's a word.
Yes, there is. I'm trying to think. It's like opinion formers, but it's not. Influencers.
Influencers. Yes, that's right. And what they like to do is trigger. That's the word I was trying to think of. Trigger somebody who they might see as a figure of authority or celebrity or power or something. So they've suddenly got broadcasting capability. Anyway.
You've read this, I assume.
Yes, I think I've seen that. Yes,
it's really quite good. Well, you see the books I have lying around.
Well, I've also got Believing in Bullshit by Stephen Law. Do you know that one?
No, but there is some sort of emotional appeal of conspiracy theories.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Anyway, it's past my bedtime.
good night.
So email me with a date. July is available at the moment. I've got, I was going to tell the viewers that we've got lined up next week. We've got Dr. Ed Morrison from Portsmouth University on evolutionary psychology. The following week, the end of June, we have Dr. Mark Darcy, who is an expert on aging. He's going to give us an explanation of why we age and maybe a bit about what happens after we die, the afterlife. So that should be fun. That should be great fun. And then following that, but the date hasn't been confirmed yet, sometime in July, we have Dr. Sam Gregson from CERN, who is going to tell us how they hunted for the Higgs boson.
Ah, yes. You believe, you see from the suit that I really have been to Westminster virtually.
Yes. Well, we don't have to do that. You won't see me in a tie. Thanks for coming.
I'm applying the same dress codes that were applied to me when I was physically there. I notice not everybody does.
Yeah.
But it kind of feels, it feels appropriate to.
Yeah. Dress codes are something else, aren't they? Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm going to play our final music now, our outro, and we're going to schedule you for a lovely event in the future.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for coming anyway.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.